Hi, this is Dr. Tobe Moma, host of Health and Wellness with Dr. Tobe, inviting you to watch our show this week with Dr. Troy and Farah Newman. Dr. Troy is a glaucoma specialist, board-certified ophthalmologist, and his wife is a comprehensive ophthalmology specialist. And they're both working in Jackson, Mississippi, and they'll be sharing with you their life story. It includes a 2-year trip to Kenya as missionaries at Tinwek Hospital. They'll share with you how they've been able to raise 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. They've been married 13 years, and how they're pursuing their careers in their mid-40s in Jackson, Mississippi with a strong Christian foundation. They'll share with you their life stories, what they've gone through, how they've overcome them, and they'll give us a few snippets into what ophthalmology and what you need to be aware of concerning your eyes. You don't want to miss this show coming up with Dr. Troy and Farah Newman. We're going to be talking about your eyes. We're going to be sharing what God has done through them. You will be blessed. God bless you. Hi, this is Dr. Tobe, Health and Wellness with Dr. Tobe, host today. What an honor to have you on my show. What a privilege. Don't touch that dial. We have some great guests with us on the show today. Dr. and Dr. Mrs. Newman. They are both ophthalmologists practicing in Jackson, Mississippi, but they have other parts of their life that I really want you to get to know about. They just came back from being missionaries in Kenya. They have parents to wonderful children, and they've been married for, I think, 10 to so years. I'm going to find out very soon. But I want to welcome to the show Health and Wellness with Dr. Tobe, Dr. and Dr. Mrs. Newman. You're welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Real pleasure having you. Real honor having you on the show.
Honored to be here.
Thank you so much for coming all the way. I mean, you came in the weather. So just tell us a bit about this. What connected me with you was a friend of ours told me you guys spent some time in Kenya. And, you know, looking at the statistics, less than 2% of Americans travel abroad. And you guys spent 2 years in a foreign country, and not just any foreign country. Kenya has been beset with Al-Shabaab. It's been beset with a lot of Muslim terrorists. It's been beset with Al-Qaeda forces. And a lot of Americans will go to Europe. They'll go to maybe Asia, Australia, but to go to a place where their safety is not guaranteed is even more remote. So I just wanted you guys to tell us what made you go to Kenya after you finished your practice, your training in University of Mississippi. What was your impulse? What was your motivation? What was your inspiration?
Well, thankfully we didn't dwell too much on all those things before we went. We felt the Lord laid it on our hearts to go serve in a place maybe where we weren't so comfortable, but that where there was a great need, and so that was our focus. We felt safe for the most part while we were there, and we felt that the Lord was going to bless our time and service, and so.
Well, I'm from Africa, so I know it's safe, but we're talking to the American audience who don't know that, because I tell you, a lot of people think it's not safe. You took 3 kids or 4 kids?
4.
You took 4 kids. How old were they when they got to Kenya? Because you left for Kenya like 2017 or
2016.
2016. So how old were they then?
Sure. So we left in August of 2016. At that time, we had a 10-year-old son, an 8-year-old son, a 4-year-old son, and a 10-month-old daughter at that time. And we also look back on our own journey and our own experience, and we even, relive those 6 to 8 months of preparing to go to Kenya. And we're astounded ourselves as to what God did. We were profoundly protected in our thoughts and our fears and our worries. That's beyond human capacity. It definitely was a supernatural thing. Now, I and the children had never been to Kenya, though I had been to other areas of Africa. Troy had been there for a couple of week vision trip, from which he came home from and said that this was right for our family, that it was the right time and it was the right place. But we didn't have a lot of experience living in Kenya, which maybe that was protective. I always tell people, you know, safety is relative. You think of safety in the realm that you know safe. And some of that is false security safeness. After, you know, living in Kenya for 2 years, sure, on the grand scale of life and places to live, I would think that, you know, the overall call would be that, yes, it's not maybe the safest place in the world. But when you're under God's umbrella and under His will, you are perfectly safe. And that's just the testimony of our story. We were very protected. We did not have any major instances. The country in itself didn't have any major fallouts. We had kind of a presidential thing happen that's never happened in Africa altogether, where we had a presidential election
that was a tribal
that was tribal fighting,
and the other tribe, the Kukuyes and another tribe.
And the Luas.
Right.
And then they, you know, pretty much vetoed the election, and then we had to have another election like 3 to 4 months later. So it was such a time that things could have happened or arose, but God was so faithful. God was so faithful to the Kenyan people and to that nation, and obviously to our family. And so He kept us in perfect safety.
Let me go back a little bit, because there are people watching who want to be missionaries, short-term, long-term, but they've never gotten that. They feel there's always that, they've not gotten that give, that release, and they have concerns about cross-cultural. Okay, here you are, they call you what's that word they call Caucasians in Kenya? Mzuru or something. Mzungu, and you stick out. You're the only Caucasian in a 1,000-mile radius or so, apart from your fellow missionaries. A lot of people have concerns. So my question to Troy is, how did you prepare for cross-cultural missions? Did you go through a class? Did you go through a seminar? Did you have some Bible school lectures? Was there something that, apart from your medical school and residency, how did you prepare for cross-cultural missions?
Well, for us, you know, I think generally speaking, if you go to serve overseas, especially for any kind of a long-term basis, often you're going through a sending organization, some organization that will offer training and really even require training, cross-cultural training, maybe language training, depending on where you go. We had some experiences. Part of our journey really involved short-term mission trips, and so we had some cross-cultural experiences. I think we were sensitive. Humility is a very big thing. If you can just go with humility, regardless of whether or not you know all the details of the culture, you can start there. We gained a lot of cultural and cross-cultural training probably along the way, and we've even had more since. But there's often some formal training involved on the front end.
I think also for our story in particularly is, and it, you know, looks different for different missionary families, but God had worked, you know, ahead. He was definitely working on the forefront of our story, not only in getting our heart's desires to match His, to where when this came up that we were on board and definitely had a full heartfelt yes. But He also used places of the world and short-term trips, and He used people that He would send us where we were asking the Lord to, if we were in Jackson at that time, Mississippi, living, that He would bring us into the place of other nations, that He would bring people into our world and into our realm, even right there in the hub of Jackson, Mississippi, where we could be among nations. And God did it. God did it. We were coming back home from India one time, Troy and I, and just distinctly asked the Lord, as we land on the ground in Jackson, Mississippi, because that's where You have us for now, would You bring someone to us from the nations? And He did. He sent us an Iraqi family within a month later, for which we spent 10 months of time of our life with our children as a family unit, really taking in these 3 Iraqi children that were from Baghdad. And so we learned how to how to communicate, how to love well, you know, how to be in their culture, but then invite them into our culture. And so that was just a beautiful time of training that we had no idea that God was
I served as
doing
a
with it.
short-term missionary in Ethiopia. I went with the Adventist Health International. I worked in a place called Gimbi, Ethiopia for 3 months. But what was unique was I had finished my master's in tropical medicine in London, and everybody expected me to start working as a doctor in London. And this is how it happened for me. I had this pull, and you know, everybody has his way he hears God, but I heard the voice of the Lord tell me, I want you to go to Ethiopia and take your wife with you, and we'll take care of the future of your training as a doctor. So I left London and went to Ethiopia. My wife had actually just come out of surgery basically 2-3 weeks before. Her mom was there taking care of her, and you know, it was like a shock when I told my wife we're leaving for Ethiopia in a week.
In a week.
You know, or 2 or something. And she thankfully she obeyed, and she'll tell you that it was the best time of her life and our life, because we were able to see God do things that, you know, it was just awesome.
Yeah.
But what I learned from that was, in spite of the surrounding circumstances, her family, my family, naysayers, evil prognosticators, if I may use those words, we still were able to do God's will, and we came back, and God eventually opened a door for us to do residency. Because the reason why they told me I shouldn't go to Ethiopia was, how can you get a residency in America when you don't have clinical experience in America? I had worked in Nigeria, I had worked in London, but I had never worked in America. Now I'm working in a missions field in Ethiopia. But the miracle was, when I got to the U.S., the person who saw my application to do general surgery, because I did 2 years of general surgery and I did 3 years of family, was a person who had trained with that same Adventist Health.
Of course.
From Loma Linda. And he said, I want you to start immediately, and the rest is history. So I see God working. So I heard, in my own view, a voice saying, I want you to go to Ethiopia. The question I have for you is, you had your wife just have a baby. You have a 10-month-old baby, Troy. What was the impetus? Was it just conviction? Was it, because a lot of people are watching and they're like, I'm not sure this is the right time. I have this nudge, but I can't confirm if it's really God or just my emotions, you know. So I think it's something that we need to ask. So tell us how you knew the difference.
Well, the Farah mentioned before our kind of the desires of our heart lining up with what we believe to be God's will. And I think that was happening through some of these experiences that we had, some overseas mission trips that really changed our hearts, opened our eyes to the nations. This family that was we were really doing life with, really supporting them in a way that just blessed both of us, opened our eyes to a lot of challenges that exist, outside of our comfortable lives here. But also just the Word of God will speak, and I was really in a time of pretty deep study with some men that we were studying the Bible. We happened to be in the book of Joshua at the time, and we were, as a family, we were, at the same time all these influences were occurring to us. We were still living, the lives of American physicians. We're both practicing physicians. We had our kids in schools and doing the sports, and we were pursuing some of the things that we pursue here, and we felt the Lord. I really felt the Lord speaking to me through the story of Achan.
Okay.
Now that story may speak differently to me now or to other people, but at that time we were on the path pursuing a purchase of land. We were planning to build a new home, and I just felt through the story of Achan, him withholding the things that he was not supposed to have. I just felt the Lord speaking to me through that scripture, saying that this is not for you now. This is not this step that you're about to take is not. This is not what I have for you now. And in fact, I'm calling you to leave some of these things and to turn in a different direction. And so Farrah and I had a really long conversation one evening, literally just sitting in the driveway of our house in the car.
Yes. A date night.
And at the end of that conversation, we decided this is the direction we're going. We're going to actually not buy this land. We're going to, in fact, start to let go of many of the things that we have and sell things and downsize and move toward the mission field.
So give us an insight, Farrah, on your daily activities. I don't know how active you were with 4 kids. I'm like, your hands were probably full, but daily activities as a medical missionary. I know you worked at one of the biggest missions hospitals. I think it was, wasn't it?
Tenwick Hospital.
Right. So it's a massive hospital, probably like 100, 200 bed hospital.
300 beds.
300 bed.
Hospital.
So obviously it's massive. But your role, what was your role as an ophthalmologist? How did you fit in that big setup?
Sure. So I'll speak on behalf of Tenwick Hospital and just the eye department. And then can share what my daily life looked like, because as you can imagine, our daily lives look different many days, because here we have landed in a rural western side of Kenya, and though Tenwick Hospital is amazing as to what its capacity and its capabilities are, we are definitely still in the bush of Africa. And so the living situation and what it requires to live there is incredible and intense. So Tenwick Mission Hospital, yes, about a 300 bed medical facility, but amazingly, especially over the last 10 years, there's been an emphasis and a focus on building and developing an eye department, and even so much so an eye building. So that has been the works before Troy and I even landed on the ground at Tenwick Hospital. But the beautiful thing is that we felt like God had called us to that place to see that come to fruition, and to help be a part of that actually happening and opening up and being present and providing services for the people from all over Kenya and neighboring regions of Kenya. And so that did come to fruition in January of 2018. This brand new eye building opened, and we were able to serve and see patients and provide services.
And you have been there from 2016 till it opened.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow.
We were in a very small little section of the hospital, kind of down an open wall corridor, where you could go in, and there was a room with just kind of half wall partitions between where we would try to see patients. Just very crowded, and it did the best we could do with it. So we were definitely still providing eye care up until that January 2018, but certainly for the region and for this part of the world, and for the Kenyans that can get to this hospital, opening this eye building was a major miracle. As far as my daily life looked like, we did have 4 children, and then one big, huge change that came with us was that our children were in private Christian schools prior to going to Kenya, and then when we landed here in rural Kenya, the option for schooling was homeschooling, and so that was me. And so we had the first year we had a kindergartner and a 2nd grader and a 5th grader, and a 10-month-old. And so, I just gathered up as much curriculum as I could and shoved it into many luggage bags as I could and flew across the world with it, and then landed there with these 3 wondering eyes and really smart children, but looking at me as mama, teacher, and everything with these curriculum books. And so,
videos?
No, I didn't take any videos, and our internet is really spotty and iffy, so online education is not really an option at all in this part of Kenya. And so, that first 6 months we had to figure it out together. And so daily life looked like educating my children a lot of times, and the majority of the day. And as we moved into the next year, of course that was still a major part of my day, was to love my children well, to make sure they were getting the education that they needed. Also educating and teaching other missionary kids, especially in math. And then thankfully the Lord was gracious, and He did make a way for me to be a physician at the hospital as well. And so I would be up there 2 to 3 days a week, seeing patients or helping with surgery on Thursdays. And then Troy's day, would look much different. I'll let him, if you want to, speak into what the
Tell
medical.
us what your day was like.
Because yes,
You
you're
were
right.
the medical director of the ophthalmological service, I presume.
He can tell
Was
you
there
about
another
volume.
ophthalmological surgeon there?
There's another
There's one
ophthalmologist
other.
there,
Okay.
Ben Roberts, who's a retina specialist, an ophthalmologist who specializes in retina, and he of course he does everything when you're there. So do we. We do. We don't limit ourselves to our subspecialty by any means, because you have to take care of who's there in front of you. But my day in the morning, I would get up and we would just get the house going, kind of like a normal family would. Get the kids up, ready for school, try to get them fed, and there was a few additional things like fetching the water from the rain tank and things that we don't do here, just some basics. But then I would head up to the hospital. We'd walk up the hill a few hundred yards to the hospital from our house and just get started. We'd often have devotion time in the morning with the staff before our clinic started.
They don't have a lot of emergencies in ophthalmology, right? Am I correct or am I wrong? In Africa, it's not always like in America.
Yeah.
I know America, they don't have a whole lot of ophthalmological emergencies. In Africa,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's always some trauma or something.
Yeah,
There's lots of trauma.
Lots of trauma. We
Yeah.
probably treated 5 or 6 on average a week of a ruptured eyeball from injury. Mostly kids with sticks, so lots of other things as well.
So your schedule had to be flexible because, or were you on call one day, then Dr. Roberts was on call the next day?
We
Was
kind
that how
of
it
tried to
was?
rotate it that way. We were
Okay.
always present, always there. We're just
Right.
down the hill.
We live at the hospital, so
but
we're
on
always
weekends, we tried to rotate it depending on who was there. We might,
Right.
try to not have 2 of us. Maybe somebody had to go into Nairobi for groceries or something, so we tried to.
How
rotate
far
it,
was
but
Nairobi from Tenwek?
It's about 4 hours drive.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that was our closest grocery store. So like our milk would come each morning, as part of our daily routine. Our milk would come each morning from our Kenyan friend who has a cow, and she would bring that, and then we would take that milk, filter it, pasteurize it all ourselves every day. Our eggs would come from our local orphanage, because that would help Joseph in the orphanage in Imoja Children's Home for resources for the children. So we would get our eggs from him each week, and then our local vegetables. We would walk up the dirt road to what we call a duka, which is kind of like a temporary kiosk little stand, wooden stand. That we would buy our local vegetables from our local people, as that would give them a means of
Subsistence, right.
yes, to for their own lives, and then but any grocery store type things outside of that, Nairobi was our closest.
Like cereals.
Like cereals
Packaged
or
things, yeah.
beans or rice or
Now this is a very unusual question, but I know it's something that happens all the time. Give me an idea how your family has reacted, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. They feel, I don't want to tell anybody my parents didn't support us, or my brother thought I was out of my mind. They thought I was out of my mind when I took my wife after surgery to Ethiopia. So I just want you guys to know, because a lot of people want to know this, because it's something that they want to do, but some family member is saying, hey, you've lost your mind, what's wrong with you? So if they hear your story, it might let them know, hey, this is not so uncommon. I had it. I don't know if you guys faced any kind of...
I think, from our perspective, we felt like the Lord was calling our family in this way. And by our family, I meant my wife and my children and myself. And we love our extended family. We're grateful for them. But this was a family decision of our unit. And we felt that this was our calling. And so we kept a lot of our we didn't sit there and poll the audience to decide if we should do this or not, because we felt like that may not turn out very well. And
Well, you told them, obviously.
we certainly told them in due time. And when we had decided and we had some plans in place, and we weren't sitting there trying to figure it out, but then we shared it with them in love. And my parents took it pretty well. They were not thrilled to see us leave the country, honestly, but they understood our hearts, and they understood God's calling on our lives, so they were.
In fact, they have a
pretty
beautiful
supportive.
part of our story looking back, because as we sat in their living room with their 4 beautiful grandchildren, and they're one of 2 sons. Troy has 1 brother, and shared that this is what we were doing. It was already decided in our hearts and in our logistics and everything. I remember his mom saying, and this is part of their story and their testimony, but like she's like, a few years ago, I'm not sure I could have handled what you just said, but today I understand the gospel, and I know what the gospel means and what it means to the world. And so that was such a grace answer. That was a beautiful answer. My mom is a single mom, and I'm an only child, so I have the only grandchildren. So I can speak into that for anyone that has, a parental situation where you're doing.
Is she in Jackson, your mom?
And she's in Jackson.
Okay.
But as I shared that with my mom, of course, that was incredibly difficult, for her to receive. And it was an emotional moment. It definitely was. It was for her. It was for me. And God just gave me such a word and a peace for her that I got to see lived out in those 2 years while we were gone, that I told my mom, I said, oh, Mom, like, God's got good things in store for you too. Like, He's going to use this for His glory in your life.
Wow.
Like, there's something that, like, you might need that you don't realize you do, or a place in your life that He's going to feel that you don't even know is void, that He's going to feel that in your life, and this is going to work for your good as much as for our good.
Wow.
And I got to literally see that play out in the 2 years that we were gone, even in her life.
Wow. 2 years, you didn't come back for those 24 months. There was no return. Like,
we were back one
long.
time,
Just
for
the two of
for
us.
A brief
Okay.
conference,
Oh, okay.
Ophthalmology
About
conference
an
for a
hour,
few days.
about a year and a half in. So we were there.
did you go for the CMDA conference in Greece?
We did go to
You
the
went to
CMD
Greece, okay.
conference in Greece.
Awesome.
Yes, but our kids did. Kids were there the whole.
No.
They never touched American soil.
Yeah, they never did come back.
Yeah.
During that time.
We're going to be back next week. We're going to continue to unravel, peel off this layer by layer of the Newman story. They've only shared a tidbit of their life experience in Kenya, and I'm hoping that it's inspiring young and budding missionaries who want to change the world to know that there is a world out there, 8 billion people, and Jesus needs to be heard, and many of them have never heard the name of Jesus. Their story will inspire you. Tune in same time next week. This is Tobe Mohammed. Go to faithandpower.online or write to us at P.O. Box 550 71294 West Monroe, Louisiana. We want to hear you. We want to know how God is blessing you through this program. This is Tobe saying Jesus is Lord, and don't forget, He wishes that you be in health above all things. God bless you in Jesus' name. All right.